Good morning and welcome to the 2018 Annual Presidential Wreathlaying here at the Harding Memorial. We're pleased that you could join us today as we honor the service of President Warren Harding. And first of all, would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is out by the street. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start by having an invocation by Chaplain Stephen Pauley.
Let us pray. Creator God, we thank you for the occasion that brings us here today. We ask for your blessing on today's events. We are grateful for the example of service to this country set by President Harding. His example should be lived out in our life, and his devotion to service should forever be our standard. Be with us today throughout today's events, and keep us safe as we leave here today. It's in your precious name we say, amen.
I will have words of welcome by Marion Mayor Scott Schertzer.
Good morning, everybody, and on behalf of the city of Marion, it is my pleasure and my honor to welcome you here this morning. We want to welcome the Harding family members that are here. We are so grateful that they come back every year and participate in the Marion community. Thank you so much for doing that. Brigadier General Tony Wright, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you are the tallest Brigadier General that has ever been to Marion, Ohio. So thank you and your staff for coming as well. Also, Sherry and your staff who do such a great job with the Harding Memorial, the Harding Home, and everything Harding related in Marion. Thank you so much. And we have a few other folks here. I want to thank State Senator Dave Burke for coming. It's always great when Dave comes back to his hometown. I tell people that all the time. Dorothy Planda is here as well. Thank you so much. And our County Commissioner Kerr Murray. So, as Warren Harding might say, I will no longer bloviate, and I will pass the mic over to the next politician.
And we'll have an additional welcome from our Marion County Commissioner Kerr Murray.
Okay, I also like to welcome you and thank all the same people that Mayor Schertzer thanked for being here. But it is an honor to be here with all of you today and an honor to live in this community that our 29th president called home. It's great to be here, and I just lost my notes. I had permission from Sherry just to mention this one thing. Several years ago, when Sharon and I bought our first home, we had the privilege of having a neighbor of Harold and Margaret Augustine who were caretakers. They actually lived in Harding's home, the upper floor, for several years. But when I think of honor, I certainly do think about Harold, because everything he did at the home and at the memorial was to honor President Harding. Thank you for coming. God bless.
Fortunate that we have our state senator, Dorothy Planda, here, as well as our state senator, I just elevated you. State Representative Dorothy Planda and our state senator, Dave Burke, and we'll hear from Dorothy.
Thank you, Sherry. It is my honor to be here with you today in Marion County as we honor our 29th President of the United States, Warren G. Harding. We honor a man whose influence in this region and in our beloved Buckeye State and across the nation, and our honor is unmistakable. Every time we pick up a copy of the Marion Star, at least I think of the $300 that he spent as a young man to purchase the struggling paper at the time and turn it into a profitable enterprise. At the turn of the 19th century, President Harding entered politics as an Ohio State senator. At the dawn of the 20th century, he rose to the position of lieutenant governor before becoming a United States senator elected in 1914. As we know, it was nearly 100 years ago that Warren G. Harding was elected to the presidency, the 8th out of 8 individuals hailing from Ohio that reached the highest office in the land. It is truly a remarkable career that spanned just 57 years, but it was done so by making his mark on the local, state, and federal level. It is well documented that President Harding loved this community. I like to think that there were many times in the Oval Office where he thought of this wonderful city and the people who populated it. President Harding rose to the highest of heights in his life, but he never forgot where he came from. President Harding famously stated that, quote, "A republic worth living in is worth fighting for sacrificing for, and dying for." In his address to the 1916 Republican Convention, he stated, quote, "In the great fulfillment, we must have citizenship less concerned about what the government can do for it and more anxious about what it can do for the nation." Similar words were spoken just over 4 decades later by President John F. Kennedy. These two leaders of our nation understand that part of genuine leadership is in sacrifice. Sacrifice for your fellow citizens and sacrifice of your time. President Harding lived his own words. He fought for our republic. He sacrificed for it. He spent his career serving in it. And we are proud that this servant of this brilliant experiment that we call the United States of America called Marion his home. Thank you.
And we'll hear now from State Senator Dave Burke, who has Warren Harding's former Senate district.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Just reflecting as I walk through the gate, I remember as a child countless times squeezing through the gate. I'm not sure who else had that experience, but I assume that we're past the statute of limitations for trespassing. It's an honor to serve in the State House in the capacity that Warren Harding served in. And for those that haven't heard this story, my family connection to the Harding family is kind of unique. Here in Marion, my great-great-uncle was a captain in the police force, and his name was Edward Masterson. And I believe he was the last officer in this city, as a city police officer, to pass away in the line of duty. That occurred because he was on an advance team for the president when he was returning to Marion, slipped off the running board of a car, struck his head on the curb downtown, and passed away. So it's an odd connection. He was also friends with the president at a social level as well. That comes back to me today in the State House in the oddest of ways. Every once in a while when I am working on a piece of policy in a meeting, and I don't necessarily believe this stuff, but my door will crack open. And it's happened probably a good dozen times since I've been in the State Senate. Never happened in the House. And I always kind of joke that it's Warren Harding coming to remind me while I'm there of the things we're working on. It's never during anything casual. It's always during a meeting. So as you think about where you come from and the greatness of Marion and Marion County, it's an honor to follow partway in the footsteps that led Warren Harding to the White House. And I never forget the duty that public service brings us, even when you're just a little guy from the small town of Marion. So it's an honor to serve, and thank you, Mr. President, for your service. Absolutely.
This weekend, the Warren G. Harding Symposium is zeroing in on the U.S. presidency and the press. President Harding, as many of you know, is the only newspaper man to become President of the United States, and I think that distinction is most likely secure. President Harding knew in every fiber of his being that a free press was essential to a democracy. He knew it worked on behalf of the people, not only in providing information and offering food for thought, but in shining a light in the darkest corners of our society. It wasn't perfect then, it's not perfect now. Still, President Harding was proud to have been a newspaper man and considered it the noblest of professions. I might suggest that he considered his work in the Fourth Estate to be the greatest calling and accomplishment of his life. Just a week before his death in 1923, he told the Seattle Press Club that the press is, quote, a teacher which knows no vacation. The news never stops. The events of human society change on a dime. We know this. And Warren Harding understood the immense responsibility which boils down to recording history. He took that innate understanding of people to the White House. We pay tribute today to President Warren G. Harding, a gentle man who calmly righted the American ship during one of the most chaotic and misunderstood times in American history. Americans knew he cared about them and that he sought to make their lives better. He served the presidency with dignity, honor, and compassion for others, perhaps largely due to the fact that he was a newspaper man at heart. And now we will hear from Brigadier General Tony Wright for the U.S. Army tribute, representing President Donald Trump.
Honored guest, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege to represent President Donald J. Trump in paying tribute to the life and legacy of President Warren G. Harding. President Harding was a man of far-reaching vision and accomplished a great deal in his short time in office. His contributions as our 29th president set the tone for the sweeping economic and social changes of the 1920s and have had a profound and lasting impact on our country. It is a privilege to join you today in celebrating President Harding's role in building our great nation and his dedication to a larger purpose. During Harding's youth, the majority of Americans still lived on farms and in small towns. He spent much of his life in Marion and has become closely associated with it. Throughout his life, Harding made clear his love of Marion and its way of life. At age 19, he purchased a struggling paper and transformed it into the Marion Star, the success of which launched his political career. Harding served as Ohio's lieutenant governor and served 2 terms as an Ohio senator. Harding began his 4 years as a state senator, a political unknown. He ended them as one of the most popular figures in the Ohio Republican Party. He always appeared calm and displayed humility, characteristics that endeared him to fellow politicians. In 1920, Harding became the first sitting senator to be elected to the presidency. His front porch campaign projected several themes: stability, small-town values, and a common man rising to the nation's highest office. During his campaign, he spoke to over 600,000 people from his home here in Marion, including for the first time women voters who would soon vote in a national election. As I study our country's history, I'm struck at how, although we want to believe that our times are unique and our struggles, though, are not entirely new, the 1920s in some ways shared the same challenges and struggles that we face today: the aftermath of war, veterans care, and the federal debt. Challenges our country faced for the first time during Harding's presidency. He once stated, America's need is not heroics, but healing, not nostrums, but normalcy, not revolution, but restoration. He also stated, in the great fulfillment, we must have a citizenship less concerned about what the government can do for it and more anxious about what it can do for our nation. Words as relevant today as they were nearly 100 years ago. Harding was sworn in as president on March 4th, 1921, in the presence of his wife and his father, preferring a low-key inauguration without the customary parade. His plans to achieve greater prosperity went far beyond good governance. Through his efforts, American workers realized an 8-hour workday, and with the help of his wife Florence, Harding formed the Veterans Bureau tasked with consolidating medical care of World War I veterans. When Harding took office in 1921, more than 300,000 veterans were being treated in hospitals, and nearly 70,000 suffered from long-term illness and injuries associated with the Great War. Thousands more remained untreated. Today, our veterans have access to specialized medical care and a strong network of physical and mental support systems throughout their military careers, a system that continues making improvements and innovations. President Harding also understood the limits of government, once stating, "The world needs to be reminded that all human ills are not curable by legislation, and that the quantity of statutory enactment and excess of government offer no substitute for quality of citizenship." Sadly, President Harding passed away unexpectedly on August 2nd, 1923 in San Francisco. Harding's vision reaches across generations and helps provide the leaders of today a strong foundation on which to build. We are grateful as a nation to be able to stand upon these foundations and construct a better path to peace and prosperity. On behalf of the President of the United States, I thank you for your time and for your tribute to a president whose legacy continues to undergird the challenges we face today. Thank you.
The family tribute will be given by Dr. Warren Harding III, grandnephew of the President.
Thank you, Sherry, and I should say Kevin Hall also. And I'd like to just mention Shannon Morris, the people who really make the Harding home go every day and have done such wonderful things over the past 10 years. I'm very proud to be here as a representative of the Harding family at this ceremony to honor the accomplishments and the memory of President and Mrs. Warren Harding. President Harding was my great uncle, my grandfather's brother. The edifice that we're in today is a terrific tribute to the President and Mrs. Harding. But what I'm sure that he would be just as happy about if he were here this morning would be to see the people who are here, and particularly the 3 young ladies who are members of the Marion swim team. I'm glad they have their towels with them on a cold morning like this. And I'm also very pleased that we have no rain and no lightning and particularly no thunder this morning to interfere with my speaking. So it's been terrific to be here already and looking forward to this afternoon. And thank you so much, each and every one of you, for coming and being a part of this wonderful ceremony.
this concludes this year's wreath laying. Feel free to spend some time in here if you'd like. Thank you.